To attend the same school as that scumbag, I, who had excellent grade in my previous life, deliberately left my exam blank. I ruined my own future, was abandoned by everyone, and ultimately died under his mistress's car wheels. When I opened my eyes, I was reborn at the college entrance exam.
1.
Holding a pen and listening to the scratch of writing around me, I still felt a bit unaccustomed. Wasn't I dead? I remembered after discovering Leo's affair, I confronted him and his mistress, but she drove straight at me, sending me flying 4 or 5 meters. My last memory was of them fleeing in panic. But now, I'm sitting in the exam room with a Chinese test paper in front of me, surrounded by other students in high school uniforms. I pinch my thigh hard. Ouch, it hurts. This isn't a dream, it's real. I really have been reborn on the college entrance exam day, during the first subject. In my previous life, I deliberately went off topic in my essay and didn't answer the key questions, all to attend the same school as Leo. In the end, I got my wish and scored 300 points, the same as that scumbag Leo, and got into a third-rate university. My parents were furious and kicked me out, refusing to give me any living expenses for the next 3 years. Leo came from an ordinary family, but he loved spending money on parties and girls, so throughout university, he lived off my part-time work earnings. After graduation, Leo got lucky and found a job as a security guard at a private company. With his handsome looks, he seduced the boss's only daughter and then broke up with me. I was furious and went to confront him at the company, but got hit by his mistress's BMW and was severely injured. In the end, they both ran away, and I died on the way to the hospital. Now, I looked down at the test paper. The essay topic was, "Ordinary fireworks are the most beautiful scenery." I remembered in my previous life I deliberately went off topic and wrote a poem, probably not even getting 10 points.
But now,
I want revenge, so I determinedly wrote the correct answer. I wrote 815 characters with confidence, checked it once, and handed in the paper confidently. After leaving the exam room, I felt someone tap my shoulder. I turned around and remembered this was my classmate, though I'd forgotten their name. "How did the exam go, genius?" they asked with a smile. "Getting 130 in English shouldn't be a problem, right?" I suddenly remembered that in my previous life, I was the English class representative and had won several essay competitions. I estimated my score mentally, about right. It should be fine. After all, 125 is the excellence threshold. They laughed. As we were chatting, someone suddenly pulled my ponytail. I hate when people pull my hair. I turned around angrily, and there he was, Leo. Just seeing him made my blood boil, and I couldn't help shouting, "You bastard! How dare you show up in front of me?" Leo looked confused, even a bit hurt. "What's wrong, Joanna? I just wanted to ask how your exam went." "How am I a bastard?" Several classmates around us looked puzzled. I remembered, this is high school, he hasn't started cheating yet and we're still dating. The difference is, I'm in the top 3 of the class, while he's at the bottom, a problem youth. Looking at him now, honestly, besides his good looks, he has no redeeming qualities. How did I ever like him? I must have been out of my mind back then. Leo asked me how the exam went. I remembered I had promised him I would deliberately go off topic in the essay and get a low score to attend the same university as him. "It was okay," I said, "just normal performance." Leo immediately became anxious. "Normal performance means above 110, right? You broke your promise." I glared at him, and he realized he was getting too excited, so he lowered his voice and said, "Fine, there's math this afternoon. Remember not to write the correct answers."
2.
In my previous life, he scored 45 in math, and to match him, I deliberately skipped 6 multiple-choice questions and left 4 major questions blank. I remember I got 70 that time. Fighting back nausea, I forced a smile. In the exam room, I seriously solved all the problems. Although I had deliberately missed some questions in my previous life, I still wasn't satisfied. After the exam, I checked the answers. Thankfully, I remembered what they were. I estimated my math score would be around 120. After turning in the paper, I didn't wait for Leo at the door and ran straight home. In my previous life, My rebellion and obsession with Leo had broken my parents' hearts. Later, because I went to a third-rate university, my life went downhill, and I couldn't face them. Until the day I died, I hadn't seen them again. In this life, I want to cherish my family. Before I even entered the door, I could hear Mom talking loudly on the phone. Joanna should have done well in the exam. She's a good student. We've already picked out schools for her, and as soon as the results come out, we'll take her to Hawaii. You think it's too early? Not at all. I know my daughter. A top university won't be a problem. Haha. I'm just that confident. Old Joanna, haha, I've been making pork rib soup for our daughter all afternoon. She needs the nourishment. In my previous life, after the math exam, I went to hang out with Leo and didn't go home. I never knew how proud Mom was, or that my usually strict dad had spent the whole afternoon making soup for me. I couldn't hold back my tears. Just then, Mom finished her phone call and said, "Old Joanna, go outside and see why our daughter isn't back yet." Dad said, "It's getting late. I'll go check at the intersection." I coughed and then pushed open the door. "Dad, Mom." I called out loudly. "I'm home." Before I could finish speaking, tears were already flowing. My parents were startled. Mom quickly put down the phone and ran over, reaching out to wipe my tears. "What's wrong? Why are you crying? Did someone bully you?" Dad didn't even put down the ladle before rushing over. "Did the exam not go well?" He glared at Mom. "Did you pressure her?" "It's okay, baby. It doesn't matter if today didn't go well. There's still tomorrow. We have the means, don't worry." I looked at Mom, tears still welling up in my eyes, and asked, "Mom, if I didn't do well, would you be angry?" I remembered in my previous life, when the results came out, Mom was hospitalized for high blood pressure. What nonsense. Mom gently patted me and wiped away my tears. How could I not know what kind of person my daughter is? "If you didn't do well, then you didn't do well. It's okay. We can try again next year if necessary." I sniffled and smiled. "I'm just kidding. I did pretty well, just normal performance." 3. The next morning was the comprehensive exam, my strong suit. In my previous life, for Leo's sake, I deliberately left several questions blank. Although the test was worth 160 points, I only got 70. I randomly filled in the multiple choice questions and ended up with 140 points, even though I usually could score 240. I pulled back my thoughts and looked at the test paper before me. 2.5 hours. For someone like me who hasn't taken an exam in 10 years, it's not much time, but fortunately, my foundation was still solid. If I answered seriously, scoring 200 points shouldn't be difficult. When I wrote the last word, I let out a long breath. Looking up, there was still half an hour left, just enough time to check my answers. As I walked out of the exam room, a tall figure appeared beside me. It was the classmate who had greeted me yesterday. "From your expression, I can guess you did well," he smiled. "How was it? Normal performance?" I smiled at him and asked, "What about you? How did you do?" "Same as usual," he said casually, winking at me. "If nothing unexpected happened, I should be about the same as you." Strange, this classmate's skin wasn't as fair as Leo's, but his features were very handsome. When he smiled, he had a slight fang showing. How come I don't remember having someone this good-looking in class? In my previous life, I was really fooled by that scumbag Leo. Just as I was thinking this, Leo appeared in my sight. Just seeing him irritated me, and I wanted to turn and leave, but he quickly walked over, grabbed my arm, and then challenged the handsome classmate in front of us. "What are you doing? Trying to hit on Joanna?" "What? Hit on me?" I looked at that classmate in surprise. After seeing Leo, his expression changed instantly, and he fell silent. Seeing Leo grab my arm, he coldly said, "You're hurting her." I quickly shook off Leo's hand. "What are you doing?" I said coldly, "We're still at school. Don't touch me. Mind your behavior." Leo was stunned. I knew why he was so surprised. In my previous life, I was the one pursuing him, and he always treated me coldly, but now, he doesn't deserve it at all. "This afternoon is the Chinese exam, my weak point," I said to that classmate. "You're good at Chinese, right? Could you teach me some key points?" He looked at me, seeming somewhat surprised. Leo became anxious. Joanna, are you going to take the exam seriously? Didn't we agree to go to a third-rate university together? Of course. I rolled my eyes. This is the college entrance exam. How many chances does one get in a lifetime? If you're not going to study hard, stop bothering me. Leo's face turned ashen. I couldn't be bothered with him anymore, so I linked arms with that classmate and walked away together. I was afraid he would shake me off, but surprisingly, he went along with it. We found a small restaurant and ordered 2 plates of rice and some dishes. You? He looked at me, hesitating, as if wanting to say something. What is it? I asked. You used to be so cold, never asking me anything, he said. Even though I've always been the Chinese class representative, my efforts never yielded any results. Ha ha. I was somewhat surprised. Yes, he smiled at me. In our first year, I confessed to you, but you rejected me. Don't you remember? 4. I suddenly remembered who he was.
Ethan.
Shortly after starting high school, he had confessed to me. I remember when he handed me that letter. His face was red as an apple, and I returned the letter to him, telling him not to have such delusions. After that, he often competed with me for first place, which made me dislike him even more. At that time, I liked Leo, but looking back now, someone like Ethan who is tall, strong, and athletic, isn't he more attractive? And he's a top student too. I'm sorry, I said sincerely. Back then? It's okay, he immediately interrupted me. That's in the past. TSK, looks like he doesn't like me anymore. But he's still willing to help me review, which I'm really grateful for. During lunch break, Ethan took the time to teach me a lot, especially those easily confused key points, which were exactly my weak spots back then. He explained everything very clearly, and I felt I should be able to perform better than expected in the afternoon exam. The English exam started at 3 o'clock, with entry to the exam room 45 minutes earlier. Just 1 minute before entering the exam room, Ethan suddenly called out to me. Hey, which university are you planning to apply to? He asked.
What?
I didn't understand. If you do well this afternoon, he suddenly stopped looking at me. You'll definitely do better than usual. See you after the exam. Indeed, I did well. The last-minute review really worked. The grammar and fixed phrases Ethan helped me review greatly improved my 45-point essay, and I felt I could get at least 60 points. After the exam, I saw Leo waiting at the door, chatting happily with a girl beside him. TSK, in my previous life, he never waited for me after exams. I was always the one waiting for him. Looking at him now, a failing student who knows nothing, I really wonder what he's hanging around the exam room for. He's not worth waiting for at all. I looked at him and that girl expressionlessly, then grabbed my bag, preparing to walk past them. Joanna? Joanna, he saw me and called out urgently. I pretended not to hear, but he grabbed my arm from behind. Let go. I shook off his hand and turned to glare at him. Stay away from me. Since my rebirth, my love for him ended the moment he and his mistress ran me over with their car and fled. Now I only feel hatred for him. If I had known we were still in high school and everything could be changed, I would have broken both his legs. Every time I see him, I want to slap him. Leo stood there stunned, his face turning red as a tomato. He had never seen me react like this. After all, just the day before the exam, I had sweetly promised him that I would get low scores with him, swearing nothing could separate us. Looking back now, how could that be true? Reality could separate us, and so could a mistress. Just then, the girl who had been chatting with him came over, looked at both of us, and said coyly, Joanna, Leo and I aren't in a relationship. He was just chatting with me. Why are you angry? Nothing happened between us. Hearing this, Leo's expression noticeably softened. He even smiled smugly and said, Joanna, look at you. Why are you still so jealous? I was really fed up. Jealous? Are you dreaming? I said, please, just disappear from my world. Get as far away as possible, okay? Then I looked at that girl and added, please, if you like him, take him away. Consider it charity. 5. The hallway fell silent. Although exams were held in different classrooms, Most students were from our school, so everyone knew each other. Leo and I were quite a famous couple, a top student pursuing a poor student, skipping classes for love. Leo ignored my pursuit while I loved him deeply. Looking back now, I realize how foolish I was then, doing so many things for love. Everyone was shocked by today's scene at the exam. I could tell just by their expressions. Leo's face changed from white to red, and finally turned dark. "Joanna," he said, "what's wrong with you? Are you breaking up with me?" Wow, I was really eager to end this relationship. "Yes," I said briefly. "That's exactly what I mean." Leo stared at me, then shifted his gaze, saw someone, and suddenly charged forward with his fist raised. I turned around and saw Ethan. Ethan must have been watching from the side for a while. When Leo rushed at him, Ethan instinctively turned his head to dodge, grabbed Leo's arm, and then turned to kick him. Oh, I remember now. Ethan had practiced taekwondo. Though Leo wasn't as tall as Ethan, as a troublemaker, he had plenty of street fighting experience, so they quickly became entangled, with neither gaining the upper hand momentarily. Surrounding students screamed, and several familiar faces rushed to separate them. I suddenly realized we were still at the exam site and could face disciplinary action. Leo's grades were poor, so discipline wouldn't affect him much, but Ethan was a top student planning to attend H University. Thinking of this, I quickly rushed over to push Leo away from Ethan, then shouted at him, "Are you crazy? Do you know where we are?" Leo had been hit in the face, and hearing my words, his anger flared even more. He yelled at me, "Joanna, whose side are you on?" I ignored him and turned to look at Ethan. He had already stood up by himself, and when I went to check, there were no obvious marks on his face, perhaps due to his darker skin. "Are you okay?" I asked. "I'm fine." Ethan smiled at me. "Don't worry, I won't be seriously hurt." Hearing this, Leo started shouting, "What did you say? Come here. Let me teach you a lesson." "Shut up," I glared at Leo. "Don't you realize where we are? The teachers will be out soon, you're finished." "So what?" Leo maintained his provocative tone. "Even if I get disciplined, I can still make the year's top student join me at a third-rate university. What's there to fear? 6. After leaving the exam site, "Joanna," Leo said, "can you attend the same school as me?" I looked at him expressionlessly. "Didn't you say you'd turn in a blank paper?" He became anxious when I didn't answer. "You did turn in a blank paper, right?" I sneered. "You'll know when the scores come out." He nodded, the hesitation in his eyes disappearing. "My friend are going to play pool. Want to join?" he asked. "No," I said. "I'm going home." He nodded and ran off with his group of friends. Standing at the exam entrance, watching other classmates looking relieved and busy, I felt a sense of unreality. How long had it been? This scene had appeared countless times in my dreams in my previous life. In that life, I worked as a factory worker, countless times regretting my decision to turn in blank papers. "Joanna." Ethan interrupted my thoughts, and I turned to look at him. "How is it?" he asked. I smiled and confidently replied, "I think your position as year's top student might be in danger." Hearing this, Ethan actually smiled. "Well," he said, "I look forward to it." At that time, universities didn't have a system of applying after getting results. It was all blind selection. I estimated my scores, and if I wasn't wrong, these scores should guarantee my admission to W University, but I wanted to apply to H University. I just couldn't remember H University's cutoff score. H University's journalism and communication program was the most famous. I had always dreamed of becoming a journalist. Although in my previous life, I went to a third-rate university, I still self-studied journalism and took the degree examination. On the day I was hit by Leo's mistress's car, I was on my way to a newspaper interview. I discussed my thoughts with my parents. Dad hoped I would apply to W University, but Mom supported me trying for H University. "If you like it, go for it," Mom said. "If you don't get in, we can try again next year. I want you to go to a good school, but I more want you to choose a major you like." I hesitated. "Daughter," Mom looked at me, "if you choose W University, will you regret this decision years later?" "Don't do anything you'll regret, Joanna." It was these words from Mom that made me decide to apply to H University. These days Leo kept trying to ask me out, but I found him annoying and kept refusing. The day before the application deadline, I received a call from Ethan. "Joanna," he said, "which school are you planning to apply to?" "What's up?" I joked. "Do you want to attend the same university as me?" He hesitated on the other end, stumbling over his words. "Well," I laughed. "Just kidding. I'm applying to H University. I want to give it a try." Ethan was very happy to hear this. "Really?" "Yes," I said. "What is it?" "I'm applying to H University too." I fell silent. I wasn't sure if I could get into H University, but Ethan was confident. Sometimes comparing yourself to others can really make you feel inferior. Seeing my silence, Ethan thought I was angry and quickly explained, "I want to study architecture. H University's civil engineering department is the best." I didn't mean to. It's fine." I came back to my senses and smiled. "Let's wait and see if we can become schoolmates." 7. After submitting the university application, all that was left was waiting for the results. Although Mom was confident in me, she was still a bit worried about my H University application. However, she never said it out loud, perhaps to avoid adding pressure. She and Dad planned to take me traveling. "Are we going traveling already?" Dad joked. "The results aren't even out yet." "What does that matter?" Mom replied carelessly, "I know my daughter best. She'll be fine. I'm just rewarding her in advance." In my previous life, I never had the chance to travel with my parents. Before the results came out, I always made excuses to go out with Leo, whether to internet cafes or to play pool. I missed countless calls from my parents. Fortunately, in this life, I had the chance to make up for it and be with them again. The three of us went to Hawaii. The azure ocean, clear sky, and fresh air became beautiful memories. Mom and I took many photos with Dad's camera, full of memories. After returning home, the school announced that the results were out. After dinner, the three of us sat in front of the computer, and I asked Mom to help me enter the website address. Watching Mom's fingers hit the keyboard, I suddenly remembered my previous life. In that life, when I checked my results and saw the total score of 300 on the screen, Mom and Dad were very disappointed. Mom's blood pressure immediately shot up, and although Dad didn't say anything, I still clearly remember tears welling up in his eyes. Mom pressed enter. We waited for a minute, or maybe 10 minutes. Finally, the results appeared. English, 130 math, 125's comprehensive, 240 Chinese, 120 total, 615. I closed my eyes, trying to hold back tears. Although the computer was the same as last time, the results were worlds apart. Mom and Dad shouted excitedly. Mom rushed over to hug me and gave me a big kiss. Dad didn't say anything but gripped my shoulders tightly. I looked up, and in the dim light of the computer screen, their eyes were red. But this time it was from joy, not sorrow. I knew H University should be no problem now. In my previous life, when I checked the results, the cutoff score was 430 points. That year's H University cutoff score couldn't possibly exceed 550 points. Just then, the phone rang. It was Ethan. "Joanna." He must have checked his results too, his voice full of excitement. "The results are out. How did you do?" "I'll tell you in a moment." I smiled and said, "How did you do?" 670, he said softly. "What about you?" "Ah." I pretended to be regretful. "You scored so high. What's wrong?" Ethan seemed very surprised. "You?" "I got 615. I laughed. "I can go to H University." Ethan was even more excited than me. "Can we go to the same university, Joanna?" "Yes," I answered laughingly. After hanging up, Mom came over smiling. "Who is that?" she asked. "Sounds like he did better than my daughter." "He's our class's top student." I smiled and said, "We both applied to H University." Mom smiled and said, "Well, he must be an excellent student indeed. Congratulations. You'll be schoolmates." I nodded. Mom hesitated before slowly speaking. "About the previous matter?" I knew she was talking about Leo and felt instinctive disgust. "He's not right for me," I said. I didn't understand before, but now I just want to focus on my studies. Mom breathed a sigh of relief. "I'm not against you having a boyfriend. It's normal for young people to have someone they like, but I hope you can meet someone who shares your values, someone you can grow with and become better together, she said. Do you understand what I mean? I understand, I said. Right now, I just want to focus on becoming better. When I'm good enough, I'll meet better people.
8.
The day the college admission letter arrived, Leo learned of my exam results. He was furious and blocked my house door. Joanna, what do you mean? His bloodshot eyes glared at me. Didn't we agree you'd turn in blank papers? Why should I turn in blank papers? I replied, I worked hard for so many years. Why should I go to a third-rate university for you? When did you become so materialistic? Just like other women, he said, love means being together no matter what. I almost laughed out loud. I said slowly, you don't want to improve yourself, but instead want to drag me down with you. You think that's love. What else could it be? Leo's eyes turned red, looking at me angrily, his voice getting louder. Joanna, if you really love me, give up your first choice and come to a third-rate university with me. We can still be together. I couldn't help but laugh. I worked hard to get into a top university, and you expect me to go to a third-rate university with you? Who do you think you are? Joanna, men don't like strong women. If you go to a top university, who will want you after graduation? Leo said smugly, as if considering me was some great favor he was doing. Come to a third-rate university with me. We'll get married after graduation. I won't look down on you. I laughed even louder. You've got some nerve. Let me tell you clearly, Leo. My future has nothing to do with you. Leo glared at me angrily and humiliated, his eyes seeming to shoot daggers. Joanna, you just won't listen, will you? That's right, I said fiercely. From now on, we go our separate ways, never to meet again. I turned to leave, but I saw a cold flash behind me. I instinctively dodged, but still felt a cold surge in my abdomen, followed by intense pain. Joanna, don't think you can have a good life. I want you to rot here with me. You'll never escape. Leo's face was contorted, angry like a demon from hell. I couldn't speak, could barely stand.
Ah.
Someone's been murdered. Help! Help! A passing neighbor who saw this scene screamed for help. Mom and Dad rushed out, seeing the scene before them. What are you doing? Dad shouted at Leo. Leo panicked, trembling as he pulled out the knife and threw it to the ground, then ran away with his tail between his legs. Mom stood there stunned, not knowing whether to chase him or call an ambulance. Dad quickly pulled out his phone and called emergency services. The ground was covered in blood, and I lost consciousness. When I woke up, I was lying in a hospital bed with Mom beside me. Joanna, you're awake. How do you feel? I felt thirsty, and Mom gently moistened a cotton swab to wipe my lips. Thankfully, your vital organs weren't damaged. It was so scary. Mom said, her tone still showing lingering fear. Where's Dad? I asked hoarsely. Your dad's at the police station. Leo has been caught. He's been thrown in jail, Mom said. I felt relieved. Yes, relieved. I was reborn to avoid him, but I didn't expect him to become so extreme. This time, with this criminal record, he would completely ruin his life. Thinking of my tragic end in my previous life, this moment felt like justice being served. Everything that happened to him was what he deserved. Later, Leo's parents came to our house, kneeling and begging us to spare their son, willing to compensate for all my losses, even selling everything they owned. But I refused them without hesitation. Afterward, they started spreading rumors about me, saying I slept with a university professor to get into that university. Of course, no one believed their words. Their family was nothing but a bunch of clowns who brought shame upon themselves. Leo was sentenced to 3 years in prison for intentional injury. On the day he officially went to prison, Dad and I went to see him. By then, his head had been shaved. Through the glass, when he saw me, his eyes still couldn't hide his hatred and jealousy. Joanna, you're really heartless, Leo said through the phone. I sneered. You really need to reflect in prison. You still can't see your own mistakes. Young man, Dad looked at Leo. He wasn't angry, nor did he shout, but just spoke to Leo in a calm tone. If you love my daughter, he said, why didn't you work harder to stand on the same level as her? I Leo mumbled in confusion. If she loves me, she should sacrifice for me. Love is about mutual compromise and growing together, Dad continued. But if one person must sacrifice their future to accommodate another, that's not love, it's blind charity. I only have one daughter. I won't let her make such a sacrifice. It would break my heart. Dad looked at Leo. And you don't really love my daughter. You're blocked by your own pride. You can't accept that she's more capable than you. You just want to control her, turn her into a slave who follows your commands. You haven't even realized that you two don't belong in the same world. After that, I never saw Leo again. I heard that after his release, he worked a low-level job in a factory. His once handsome face was blackened by smoke. His body became thin, barely looking human anymore. He never met another woman like me, and at 30, he was still living an insignificant life, dying unmarried.
But all that was in the past.
The day the results came out, I went with Ethan. He entered the civil engineering department, while I entered the journalism and communication department. This was a place I never dared to dream of in my previous life, but now I would experience it firsthand in this life. If I pursue a graduate degree, it should take 7 years. Those factory assembly lines, meager wages, and boyfriend's betrayal, all of this would gradually fade away, like a nightmare. As for relationships, once I become good enough, I will naturally meet someone equally excellent. That's what I think, and Ethan feels the same way. Now, I'm ready to start my new life.